I'm Will. This is That Gay Shit. Let's get into it. So, President Joe Biden. Love him, hate him. He's the president of the United States. And he's going to stay that way until his 4 years are up or he dies, because he is literally that old. I don't like Biden. I also don't like Trump. I thought both candidates were terrible. And honestly, when I saw who was running for president and leading the parties, I thought, really, in a country of 320 million, two nearly senile old men are the best you can come up with. So I don't like Trump. He has said many terrible things, and he has done some very rather questionable things. And then I don't like Biden. I think there are many things about him that just reek of corruption. Now, you can vote for whoever you want to vote for. Not holding that against anyone. I mean, Joe Biden was elected, and that's that. He's elected, he's been certified, he's the president. So a lot of people think that LGBT issues are for the most part solved, when really they aren't. In some countries, they are far better. Like in Canada, for example, we, I believe, are set to have conversion therapy made illegal. And then really the last big one is, that's legally related and can really be changed through law, is the gay blood ban, which that charge to legalize gay people giving blood without having to jump through extra hoops that straight people don't have to, is being led by MP Eric Duncan, who's a member of the Conservative Party, or at least he's the most outspoken person about it at the moment. But that's not the case in every country. In fact, in many countries, conversion therapy is legal, which is torturing children because they're gay to try and stop them from being gay. There is no other explanation for it. It is torture to get someone to stop being some way in which they have no control. No conversion camp uses any kind of genetic modification. And from what we understand so far, being gay, it seems to be predominantly a genetic thing. There's no social conditioning that can turn someone gay, bisexual, straight. It is just how you're born. And so in many countries, it's illegal for conversion therapy. But that's not the worst part in many countries. In many countries, it is just illegal, flat out illegal to be gay. In 8 of them, you have the punishment of death. And I believe in 7 of those, the punishment of death is prosecuted and actually followed. Globally, LGBT lives are not really cared for. Being honest, they just aren't. And people don't talk about international LGBTQ issues enough, at least in my opinion. People can talk about how they want. So Biden has done something, whether you like him or not, I think we can all agree is a good thing. Biden has threatened financial and visa sanctions against Nigeria and others over anti-gay laws. So that's what I have an article, that's what I'm going to talk about here. So Nigeria's anti-gay laws have been increasingly criticized by global rights groups, which have categorized the country as overtly homophobic. In fact, there are many countries in Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Asia that are incredibly homophobic. And then you have places like Nigeria, which has not just not allowed legal gay marriage, but has actually criminalized people trying to get gay married. So this is something that I hope Biden has the stones to follow through on, because I think it's very important, especially if he's threatening all nations that have very heavy anti-gay laws, which would mean sanctions against places like Russia and Chechnya, which, if you don't know, in Chechnya, there is currently what is essentially a gay holocaust. And I understand the weight of using the term Holocaust. Gay people in Chechnya are being systematically hunted down, captured, tortured, and killed simply for being gay. And the guy who runs Chechnya, Karakorov, makes the claim that there are no homosexual people in Chechnya and that they're all heterosexual, which in 2010, Chechnya had a population of 1.2 million. if we assume every person has a 5% chance of being in the LGBT community, which is what I believe a study at UCLA found a couple of years ago, it was about 5% of the population is either gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. If we assume a 95% chance of being cisgender, heterosexual, and we apply that over all of the people of all 1.2 million being heterosexual, we get odds that are 0%. 0%. They are so small that they are at a 0% chance. I believe you have a higher odds of your hand passing through a table because all the molecules in your hand missed all the molecules in the table than there is of every single person in Chechnya being heterosexual. So there are several countries where there are homophobic policies used to hunt down and kill gay people, and to use gay people as a scapegoat, to use the LGBT community to blame for every single problem a country has, or the majority of them, because they're a small community and they are easy to target because the LGBT community, we're born separate. So we have to find each other, but if we don't get that chance to find each other, we're a relatively easy, simple community to attack because we're not unified, right? Like a lot of ethnic minorities, religious minorities form little settlements together, right? Like you'll end up with like a Chinatown and like a little Italy if you go to bigger cities and whatnot. So they naturally kind of group together, people with similar cultures. Gay people don't do that because we're born separately across so many different cultures. And because of that, you end up with a very easy group to attack. And many people who run authoritarian countries do attack LGBT people. You look at it in Russia, Chechnya, all of the Middle East, where they throw gay people off of buildings. And I believe in all of the Muslim majority countries, it is illegal to be gay except for one. It's a really small country where it's Muslim majority and not illegal. So on to the article. President Biden has issued presidential memorandum aimed at expanding protection of the rights of LGBT individuals worldwide, including potentially through the use of financial sanctions. Nigeria's anti-gay laws have been increasingly criticized by global rights groups, which have categorized the country as overtly homophobic. Despite international pressure, ex-President Goodluck Jonathan signed the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act in January 2014, prescribing between 10 to 14 years in prison for cohabitation between same-sex sexual partners, public show of same-sex relationship, registration, operation, or participation in gay clubs, societies, or organizations, amongst others. As a predominantly conservative country, it is unlikely that Nigeria would revise its anti-gay marriage law to strengthen bilateral relations with the U.S. However, President Biden presidency threatens swift and meaningful responses, including financial sanctions against countries found guilty of human rights abuses of LGBTQI people, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex. The memo warned when foreign governments move to restrict the rights of LGBTQI persons or fail to enforce legal protections in place, thereby contributing to a climate of intolerance, agencies engaged abroad shall consider appropriate responses, including using the full range of diplomatic and assistance tools and, as appropriate, financial sanctions, visa restrictions, and other actions. All human beings should be treated with respect and dignity, and should be able to live without fear no matter who they are or whom they love, said the memorandum, building on the 2011 directive issued when Biden was serving as vice president. Now, just a comment on that. In many countries where it is illegal to be LGBT, or specifically gay, it's mostly specifically male homosexuals that are the majority of the targets. Many others, like lesbians, are still illegal or whatnot, but they don't suffer the same crime as gay men, because it's typically these very religious countries, and when gay men have sex, it's sodomy, because it has to be. And so some punishments include being like publicly canned, I think is the term. Caned might be the right one. Anyway, or public whippings, which are torture and actually a human rights violation. I forget which human right it is, but one of them is that all human beings shall be free from torture. And I think slavery might also be thrown in there as well. So when you have places like Chechnya legitimately torturing people simply for being gay, they are committing a human rights violation on the basis of people being gay in the name of religion. The United States belongs to the forefront of this struggle, speaking out and standing strong for our most dearly held values. Biden campaigned on a pledge to pass LGBTQ rights legislation known as the Equality Act in the first 100 days of his administration and to make LGBTQ rights a top priority. The memo directs U.S. agencies working abroad to work harder to combat the criminalization by foreign governments of LGBTQ status or conduct and directs the State Department to include anti-LGBTQ violence, discrimination, and laws in its annual human rights report. Something that I want to add on here. I highly recommend watching the documentary Welcome to Chechnya. It does a very good job of talking about and showing what is happening in Chechnya and Russia as a whole as LGBT people are targeted, tortured, and killed. I will warn that it has several graphic incidents of either gay people being killed, pictures of what have happened to them when they were tortured. So just be advised, but I recommend watching it just so you can get a sense of what is happening. There is a group in Russia, I think they're called the Rainbow Railroad, I could be wrong, but they are sneaking LGBT people out of Russia, Chechnya specifically, to get them safely to Western countries where they can be protected. Now, Chechnya is doing all that it can to get these people back to ensure that the human rights violations don't get out. But one of the men who escaped is actually going to the UN, and I think it's the EU, to prosecute Chechnya for these human rights violations. So far, I don't think anything has come of it, but he is incredibly brave in standing up to this religious authoritarian regime, and I completely stand with him, and Chechnya should have to pay and not be allowed to do these human rights violations anymore. Now, during this time that they've been sneaking people out of Russia, the US, during Trump's administration, accepted none of these people as refugees, even though they do fit the requirements for refugee status. So hopefully, under Biden's presidency, they will accept these people as refugees. So it further goes on to say that Biden's presidential memorandum calls for increased efforts to ensure that LGBTQ asylum seekers have equal access to protection, expanding training for U.S. federal personnel, and potential increased use of proprietary referrals to expedite resettlements of vulnerable people. It also instructs agencies to consider appropriate responses, including the full range of diplomatic tools and potential financial sanctions and visa restrictions when foreign governments restrict the rights of LGBTQ people. Biden announced the push during a forceful speech at the State Department, vowing to rebuild U.S. credibility worldwide. To further repair our moral leadership, I'm also issuing a presidential memo to agencies to reinvigorate our leadership on the LGBTQI issues and do it internationally, he said. So I sincerely hope that Biden has the balls to actually do this, to follow through and to not back down. Now, he's done some things I really despise, like canceling the Keystone Pipeline. But if he does continue with stuff like this, I can say I do support this. I think that it is a good measure to take. Now, I have another article here that is Gay Not in Our Culture, Blasphemous. Northern reps react to Biden's threat. Two House of Representatives Friday's members claim that gay or same-sex marriage is completely alien to Nigerian culture in particular and the African traditions in general. They said allowing such practice would strongly offend the sensibilities of the people. Fucking bullshit. That is fucking bullshit. You're homophobic? That's why. Just admit it. Don't say, oh, it's our culture. Fucking bullshit. Okay? The federal lawmakers, I'm not reading their names, in part because I don't respect them, and in part because I honestly can't. As in, like one of them is the Honorable Al Hassan Adodagua. I don't know if I said that right. I don't really care. Who is the majority leader of the House, and then someone else, were reacting to the threats of sanctions issued by the President of the U.S., Joe Biden, on the refusal of countries to enact laws that will accommodate the rights of LGBTQI people across the world. It will be recalled that Biden issued a memo directing state agencies operating in foreign jurisdictions to expand and protect the rights of LGBTQI people internationally. To further repair, again, it's mentioning a lot of the stuff Biden said. He also threatened to impose various degrees of sanctions on countries. We've talked about this. At the moment, Nigeria has legislation prohibiting same-sex marriages. In January 2014, under former President Goodluck Jonathan, the country enacted and signed the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, criminalizing any form of gay marriage. With the law, a jail term between 10 to 14 years awaits anyone practicing gay marriage within the Nigerian jurisdiction. The law prohibits cohabitation between same-sex sexual partners, public showings of same-sex relationships, registration, operation, or participation in gay club societies and organizations. Speaking exclusively to Saturday Vanguard on the recent U.S. President's memo, the House leader, Dagua, said that gay marriage was against the Nigerian people's culture. He said that such laws allow the practice of same-sex marriage cannot be contemplated by the National Assembly, whether now or in the near future. It will not work here. It can't work in Nigeria because we must respect our setting's peculiarities here as an institution. This is Nigeria. This is not America. This is not England. This is Nigeria, where we must have to respect some of our traditions. We must also respect some of our religious bodies. We have Christians, we have Muslims. I thank God that both Christianity and Islam, which are the two major religions, are all against the disposition of such kind of legislation. I don't think that the Nigerian legislature will entertain anything like gay here in the near future. That is bullshit. Okay? If you actually cared, you would look at some of the biggest Christian leaders. I don't know. Let's look at the fucking Pope. Who, yeah, he hasn't come out in support of gay marriage, but he is in support of same-sex civil unions and of treating gay people like human beings and not being such asinine twats that your head is so far up your ass that you can't even see how fucking stupid it is. We will not entertain that, and it is going to be blasphemous if we can begin to consider such laws. It is against our culture and provision of the two major religions. Well, maybe you should change your culture, because honestly, it seems kind of outdated. Like, you're saying, oh, it's against our culture to let people have rights. Well, then your culture is fucking flawed. It is obnoxious as far as I am concerned, Dagua said, asked if he were aware of the sanctions. The lawmaker who represents the government, said the sanctions have limits. Sanctions, there are no limits to sanctions. They can continue to sanction as long as we know that we are doing what is right within the context of our culture, our religions, within the context of our institutional expectations. Well, good for you. You want to talk about obnoxious? Obnoxious is saying that you have the right to tell people that being them is just illegal. Being gay does not harm anyone, okay? And you can't change it. So there is no reason for it to be illegal. I don't think that we can be threatened by anything, sanction or no sanction. We will only stand by what we think is right within the context of our institutional existence, he said. In the same vein, the chairman of the House Committee on Media and Public Affairs said that foreign countries do not make laws for Nigerians, and as such, the memo cannot be binding on the people. However, he advised foreign powers to instead lobby than to coerce others in any piece of legislation they may have interest in. He stressed that it was incumbent on the people to decide which laws they would enact. Yeah, and maybe and I'm going to be honest, I hope other Western countries follow suit. I would love to see Canada follow suit. I would love to see the UK, New Zealand, Australia, Western Europe follow suit with sanctions and restrictions on countries imposing anti-LGBT laws. And let's see how much you like it when all the business is cut off from Western nations and foreign aid from Western nations and all of that because you've decided to enact these anti-LGBT laws. Like, yeah, you decide what laws get made. And if other countries don't like the laws you've made, they can choose not to do business with you. Foreign sovereignty should not determine the nature of our legislation, he said. The content of our legislation is determined by the people we represent. That's why if you go to our constitution, when you open the page on preambles, you will see "We the people of Nigeria," not "We the people." Element reflects the principles of democracy, is the government of people, by the people, for the people. You're right. And then when your people start to realize that, I don't know, they want the support or money or financial aid or whatever, ability to do business with people in Western countries and developed nations, maybe you'll change your fucking mind. This just fucking pisses me off. Now, I know I'm swearing a lot, and that's because I'm irate. This shouldn't even be a thing on the fact that people hate gay people so much that they have to make anti-gay laws. Like, it pisses me off. Like, what are we in? The Stone Age? The Dark Ages? This is what, reading this, do you live in the Dark Age? And clearly they must. If you think, gay people are such an evil, a scourge, that you have to make laws against them, like, just fuck off with this shit. Anyway, that's where I'm going to end it for now. I hope that Biden does follow through with this, and I hope that these countries feel the pressure, and then I hope other Western countries follow suit, and then continue to press, because this is abhorrent. And now, I don't know if I've said this before, and if I have, I'll say it again, but I do not support religious-dominated countries. Places like Nigeria, almost every country in the Middle East. And honestly, it's mostly countries that are Muslim-dominated, that are mostly dominated by Islam, that have the most anti-LGBT laws in the world. So when people come to me, and I've seen people try and tell me that Islam is not inherently anti-LGBT, I will point out all of this when people who are high up in the Islam church and community come out and say that, anti-LGBT legislation needs to exist. I point out that in the majority of countries where it is illegal to be gay, they are Muslim majority countries. And in all the Muslim majority countries except one, it is illegal to be gay. So don't come at me with this shit that's like, oh, well, that's not what it is. No, it's true. And that's why I will never, ever defend Islam in any capacity because of this. Because the people who practice the religion, by and large, globally, are against people like me. If I were to go to a country that's Muslim majority, like Saudi Arabia, I would get thrown off of a building or stoned to death or kidnapped and tortured. Okay? Like, straight people, I don't think understand that if I want to consider going somewhere, I have to look up if I'm going to get killed for going there. This is not in any way a vendetta against straight people, but it is I despise religious organizations. For a long time, I despised Christianity, and actually as a whole, I despise Christianity. I don't mind the Roman Catholic Church because the Pope is coming out more and more in favor of gay people being treated like people. But things like, when I see shit like this, just like, what? Do you live in the Stone Age? Do you live in the Dark Age? And it's not the Stone Age. Stone Age, I don't think it was an issue. Stone Age was when being gay provided some advantages and when it had evolutionary advantages before religion like this took hold. And don't come with like it's always been that way, because it hasn't. You look at ancient cultures, the Celts didn't care. If you were gay in an ancient society, you should hope it was the Celts, because they had very little care for if people were straight or gay. The exception was you couldn't be gay and married, but that's because you weren't married until you had a child. So I really hope Biden sticks to his threat. I hope others follow suit. And then I hope these countries start to feel the pain when they continually defy human rights, and that they learn that there are consequences to their bigoted actions. All right, that's it for today. Check us out on social media at thatgaysh.t on Instagram and thatgaysht on Twitter. I'll catch you guys next time.